He's taking on the influential role of National Campaign Coordinator. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio, and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Time now for our headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to shine and make light of the best of Tuesday's newspapers, comedian Paul Cox and prophet and guru Lewis Schaefer.
Oh, thank you very much.
So you've had access to the teleprompter again. Fair enough. He'll teach me. What are you wearing the tie for, Lewis? Is
I'm
it
wearing the
a
tie.
special occasion?
This is Josh Howie gave me this tie, and everyone thinks that Josh hates me, as that people think that you hate me. But there's love. There's a lot of love in this.
Absolutely.
For everybody. And he gave me this tie. I got this in America.
Well, it's obviously American, but it's got a bit of an Evel Knievel vibe of it. It's kind of a 70s, the
really
colour cast, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does, and it looks like it's faded. It's really a horrible
Is he suggesting you try and hurtle yourself across a canyon, you think?
Maybe he doesn't like me as much as I do.
What's yours, Paul? You're just supporting...
No, this is just a blue tie.
That's kind of standard newsreader outfit, isn't it?
Just trying to fit in.
You haven't got the confidence to...
No, Josh never bought me anything.
Right, let's check out Tuesday's front pages, gentlemen. The Daily Mail. Minister's TV blunder that says it all about Tory chaos. We have The Mirror, class clown, same story, of course. The Guardian, Sunak under pressure over school funding as concrete crisis grows. Growing concrete, that did for Mike Graham, didn't it? Express, miracle weight loss jab to save lives and cut £6.5 billion bill. Slightly more upbeat news there. The iNews, Starmer calls up Blairites to fight elections as left is demoted. We'll be looking at that. And finally, the Daily Star, fangs ain't what they used to be. And those were your front pages. So first up, we'll have a look at the Daily Mail, Lewis, with the big story, I guess.
And you know what? You don't know which story's bigger, whether buildings are going to crumble and kill children, or whether this woman used a couple of curse words, which were probably chosen deliberately to do it. I think it was just a publicity stunt. So it's Minister's TV. This is this woman, Gillian Keegan, and she said she used the F word and the A word.
I suppose what people are responding to, putting aside just for one moment the possibility that it could be a stunt, they're responding to the idea that she feels aggrieved that she is finally, she's the first person in 30 years to address this situation. Apparently in 94, they became aware that this bad concrete and nobody has done anything in the meantime. This is often kind of the subtext when ministers, you know, finally kind of confront a difficult situation, that's exactly why everyone's been pushing it under. Well, I have some sympathy, is what I'm saying.
I don't know what Paul has to say, but it's not as important as what I'm going to say. Sorry about that. I agree with you. This shows there's something wrong with the political discourse in this country. Didn't Labour know about this? Didn't the newspapers know about this? Didn't the BBC, the great BBC? It just so happened this woman says something now. Where were they 20 years ago?
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I have some sympathy too. I think the only thing she did wrong today was apologise. No need to apologise. It was done not because, you know, I missed her, don't apologise. Simply, it was off air. It's kind of, it's breaking all the rules, isn't it? Yeah. You know, she was talking off air and you know, I think it endears her to the working class more, being the everyman working class representative here. I believe that everybody talks that way.
Yeah.
I don't think her language is that bad, to be honest. I mean...
Could be a lot worse.
Well, like, old-fashioned curse words of that kind are far from the most cancelable types of terminology.
Was it live on the air?
No.
So this is like... Do you remember that episode of where they went to people's hotels and they checked the hotels out? What was it, 4 and a bed or something? And the woman and the couple went into the shower thing and pulled out the hair that was in the shower drain, right? That no one would ever see. And that's what this was.
It's a very interesting comparison. I will say, I mean, she's done... I think you say she shouldn't have apologised, but actually her apology wasn't very much of an apology anyway. No. She said, I apologise for using my choice words or whatever, but my message... I think this is going to actually rumble on for a bit and is going to embarrass the government. I don't think they're going to manage to throw up smoke screens and squid ink of this kind just by using bad language. I think it's going to be... There's going to be a lot of parents who are absolutely furious that their kids can't go to school.
Yeah,
that's a much more important issue.
It is a much more important story, and that's kind of been forgotten in this.
Yeah, OK, let's have a look at The Telegraph, who, of course, lead with that same story, but they've got a couple of interesting second-tier stories.
They really do, Simon. They have a couple of really interesting stories, the first one of which is quite concerning, actually. Kim Jong-un will travel to Russia on an armed train to sign a possible weapons deal with Vladimir Putin, according to US intelligence officials. So this is just stoking those fires again of there being a pact between, an unlikely pact between Russia, China and North Korea, the sort of outcasts of the world all ganging together.
What's the nature of the deal, though, Paul? Can you...
Well, the nature of the deal would be for them to supply more weapons, obviously. How many they've got, I don't know, in exchange for money, I assume. The idea is that they're quite a poor
North
country.
Korea will be supplying weapons.
Well, that's what it says, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that seems extraordinary to me in terms of the relative size of the economy, but I suppose Korea is based on that.
They're essentially saying in return for feeding hungry Koreans.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is. It doesn't look a very nice place. I'd assume they're very hungry, but, you know...
I think it is. I think it's probably true. I mean, how many... North Korea has the nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
you only need one nuclear bomb. You don't need any other weapons. So so Russia needs weapons. They've
Oh, Russia has a serious nuclear arsenal, but I know North Korea has been developing more recently. They've got the ultrasonic missiles and so on. That was
these are your day-to-day These are your day-to-day weapons they're interested in.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing with the first sort of 10 or 15 years of the development of nuclear weapons was just bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, the Zara bomber, massive thing, and but now it's much more about tactical weapons, tactical nukes, and North Korea may well have more, high-tech versions of that.
I'm not sure. I think you use any kind of nuke and you're going to be pummeled.
It would certainly be regarded as an escalation, I should think.
Yeah, the optics are very much so. And there's another story.
Talking of escalations,
Yeah, exactly. Banks to be punished with fines if they wrongly shut out politicians. So this is banks who wrongly deny accounts to politicians and their families face the prospect of being fined, the financial watchdog warns. So this, on the face of it, looks like a victory for Farage and perhaps for GBNews as well, have championed this story throughout.
Do you think we might get a bonus?
I don't think we will get a bonus as a result. I'm not going to get my Coots account back, I don't think.
A free bank account. A story close to home for you on the cover of The Express, Lewis.
Yes, well, this is all the food stuff, because I'm Mr. Food now and I look amazing. Although I had
well, for 73, you do.
You know what? That's not far off. I'm 66, so it's like that.
Yeah, you can see it from here.
How old are you? Let the people decide who's younger.
No, it's all about the hair, mate. If I had hair...
No, it isn't.
I'm getting hair. I've lined up a contract. I'm in discussions.
Is that true?
I'm like the Putin and North Korea of hair.
No, but also the skin. Look at the skin that I have. I got fantastic skin anyway. So miracle weight loss jab to save lives. Like, this is basically they want the NHS to spend money on pharmaceuticals. All of our newspapers have been captured by the pharmaceutical industry. If this is Wegovy or Ozempic, and the truth is, and if it may work, which I don't think it will long term. You got to do it long term. It's going to hurt people more, but it's going to make the NHS broke, because
it has been It depends. If it cut down the cost of them treating people for diabetes and other metabolic disorders in hospital, it might sort of balance out. But I know what you mean. I think the whole thing about it, we are still in the early days of it yet. And the traditional thing with any weight loss system, whether or not it be willpower-based or whatever it is, it tends to rebound, doesn't it? I mean, your one doesn't, of course, if you just eat red meat and
you look great. And I'll tell you something. This is the early days of taking these pills. When I was diagnosed with high blood pressure when I was 22 years old, and for 40 years I took enalapril, which is like a ramipril, which is an ACE inhibitor. And only now they're discovering that it increases the rate of lung cancer. They didn't see it at the time.
Wow.
So if I die, it's not because of my meat diet. It's because I'm poisoned.
That has
blood
been
pressure.
noted. Finally, some hard-hitting headlines on the Star. They look like they've... What is it, a garlic... I can't work out what the story is.
If we only read the Star, it'd be a happier place. let's be honest. Dracula's a vegan. Is nothing sacred? The Star are so... Fangs ain't what they used to be. So the idea is that boffins, according to the Star, which is their term, which
most of their front pages concern boffins.
Collective noun for anyone slightly more intelligent than those who buy the Star, I'm guessing. Which I include myself in, of course, are saying that it was much more likely that he ate vegetables rather than, in here it says, the pheasant neck. But I don't think that's the point. The idea is that he's still... I mean, by the way, he's not a real character, is he?
Well, exactly. I'm just
it was like arguing...
No, he was a real person. He was a real character, and that's what they did. They checked his letters, and they found that on his letters there were traces of plant protein.
Right.
And the assumption was, oh, he's eating plants. But at the time, there was some really... It was very bad climate going on there, and people were starving. So he was not a vegan, he was starving. I guess, but I guess that's the same thing. Veganism is starvation.
I guess it is, that's true, yes. It's got that moral tang to it. We've put the front pages to rest. In the next section, we will look at the broken social contract and fat kids. Got the full spectrum there. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans tonight, joined by Paul Cox and Lewis Schaefer. So, Lewis, let's get started with the Express. The eternal question, when is levelling down really levelling up?
Yes, when you're levelled out. or she was leveled in. Keir Starmer, I don't understand what the leveling up, but that's a term that's being used.
It sounds a little bit like gangster euphemisms for like having a contract out on somebody, but it isn't that.
It's level down.
Equalizer, that's called, isn't it?
Yeah, but leveling, you're in the ground. So Angela Rayner was the shadow education secretary, and then now she was been made the shadow leveling up secretary. By
She's
Keir
still the
Starmer.
deputy prime minister, right? Which is
never changes. That can't be changed because she was voted in by the members of the Labour Party and the unions.
So in a way, this just brings an almost more stark contrast between Starmer's desire for a Blairite cabinet and the members' desire to see a gritty, northern working class.
I think hit the nail on the head. I think Starmer, he's saying we're going to win. He's got the hand on the whatever the thing. No, not the tiller. What is
the dead man's lever?
No, in the car stuff, whatever it is. The gear, he's pushing. Whatever he's pushing. He wants to win. He doesn't care what he needs to do, even if he has to bring back.
But I mean, that is the feeling, isn't it? I'm not expert on his his policies or his marketing, but I sense that this is in positioning now and starting to get in a really plausible cabinet that is just, he's so concerned with not frightening the horses. I mean, this is what everyone who finds him disappointing thinks. He's just so cautious the whole time, and it just... Rayner does have a little bit... She's a little bit jagged, isn't she?
It's a fascinating position, being the head of the Labour Party, because you never get to choose your deputy. And if you get to power, it actually becomes much more symbolic. But the Chancellor...
Prescott, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. So you end up... The Chancellor was Gordon Brown, of course, and you always talk about Blair and Brown. You don't talk about Blair and Prescott. And what is interesting is these big figures that get picked as Deputy Prime Ministers are always the same type of working-class, robust
mascots.
People. They are exactly that, aren't they? They're exactly mascots of that constituent of Union and
with a
Labour
scarf and a
members.
rattle. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have some sympathy with him because he must be thinking, you know, my God, steady as she goes at the moment. So many Labour leaders like Kinnock in my time, you know, who dropped the ball at the very last moment, you know, when you're sure that they're going to cross that line. Yeah. I guess he's, like, minimising his risk. Anyway, Paul, over to The Guardian, where a survey about poverty has somehow unaccountably become one of our top stories.
Yes. Poor people surviving, not living, as UK social contract collapses, report says. So this is an exclusive from The Guardian, saying that a commission, including former ministers' voices, concern that a lack of urgency from two main parties over the scale of poverty. Now, there's two things going on here. We've got what's actually causing it, and it seems to have been a humongous economic turndown since the way the pandemic was managed. So this is definitely the outturn of what happened during COVID, which was inevitable in terms of its economic turndown. And the reason that they don't want to talk about it, the two main parties, is because A, they don't know what the solution is, and B, they were part of the problem. So it's very difficult when you calculate those two things together to get a positive answer. Also, and if you look at the rest of Europe and the rest of the Western world, I mean, take Sweden, for instance. They didn't lock down. Their economy is close to recession at the moment, and that's not because they didn't lock down. That's because their economy is inextricably linked to the rest of the economy in the Western world.
But you will have seen the figures a couple of days ago which suggest that we'd underestimated the extent to which we had bounced back, and in fact there'd been a lot of kind of naysaying and doing Britain down considerably.
Yeah, I agree.
They're certainly not outliers on that front. I do take your point, though. I mean, I think we still have serious productivity issues, which we've had for a very long time, and these have been made worse by the number of people who essentially didn't want to come back to work again after lockdown. This is the danger, isn't it?
It's not a recent phenomenon. Britain has been struggling since the 1850s. I actually read a book about it.
The 1850s?
The 1850s, productivity in Britain has been going down since the 1850s.
So that must have been the peak of our productivity.
Yes, it was. And
that was us inventing the Industrial Revolution, wasn't it?
But this little study was done by the Poverty Strategy Commission, which actually takes money from Legatum. What do they call that? And they're involved in us, too.
Yeah,
right.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, they give money.
So they're wrong uns.
So they're and basically
stick to pastilles.
Yeah, and basically, what they're suggesting is giving all the poor families, the 6 million poor families, £6,000. which is 36 billion. You know?
I mean, you look at these figures, they say at one point they go, it's, you know, the poor people are now surviving, not living. Well, those are just two different words for the same thing. It may have an emotive point, but surviving means living. That is the Latin word, vive.
Yeah.
So, you know, it means you live beyond something. That's all it means. The idea that, you know, what do you expect poor people to be? I mean, they're creating a very emotional appeal here, the idea that poor people are just sort of on life support or something. And then you look at it, and it's been the same for, it says it hasn't budged in the last 2 decades. Their complaint is not that it's got worse, but that it hasn't improved in 2 decades. So that has basically been something you could have said at any point this century.
Yeah, but I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because, and I'm not sure why, but I think that number, which is the percent of people below the poverty line, above the poverty line, is like a completely fluid number that they can manipulate.
Of course it is. Whatever it is, it's a question of what the median is and how far below the median. Anyway, which is not to decry poor people. If any are watching, well, you have my sympathy, obviously. Lewis, Telegraph now, and in Zimbabwe, the burnt fool's bandaged finger is going wobbling back to the fire.
Yes, well, I don't understand what you mean by that, but poor people...
Kipling.
Is that Kipling, really?
It's Kipling.
Not the case.
All right, well, I'm learning something every day. The people out there, they don't expect me to know this stuff. Anyway, Kipling. Okay, anyway, you know me, and I'm going to say this as a fact. It's hundreds of white farmers returned to Zimbabwe in boosts for agriculture. And I believe that people have a right to, if you're an immigrant into a country, you should be accepted. You shouldn't be told you shouldn't live there just because you're not of this particular color that they are, and or that you weren't, you know, your ancestors weren't living there for hundreds of generations. And that's with the white farmers. I support the white farmers.
So you support the white farmers on exactly the same premise that you support Somalian arriving in the UK.
Here, you can't, you wouldn't be
it's
rude
not the same situation, though,
It is exactly the same situation.
No, it's not, because a lot of these people are the same farmers who were booted out 20 years ago by Mugabe.
Right, but I was making a joke.
OK. I can never tell because you're so dead.
It's the same face, that's
but
the
I
trouble.
wasn't sure. Paul, what do you think about this?
Well, it's really interesting. You read this story, and of course they were removed under the Mugabe dictatorship, and it was very much about the colour of their skin. You know, they were white, get them out, essentially.
Which is racism.
Which is compensation.
Absolutely no compensation. It was racism. You can be racist to white people. This story proves it. History will prove that, and already has done, that Mugabe was a little bit on the racist side. However, it's really interesting because they were once described, weren't they, as the breadbasket of the world. Of
Africa.
Of Africa, sorry, which is the heart of the world, Lewis.
Central Africa.
Of Africa, and you know, I guess there was somewhere in the States.
Egypt, the Midwest, they've all been breadbaskets.
And that was because those white farmers were very good at farming. So they decided economically it's a very good idea for them to come back.
It's a good question why they haven't managed to just pick up the pieces and farm in that manner. I don't know what special
there was no handover notes, were there?
Justice there is involved, but I mean, good luck to them. I wish them well, but I mean, it would be an extraordinarily brave person who would go back into that situation, wouldn't it? Just knowing that as soon as it might be up and running again, who knows what will happen.
That's a really good point, and it is dangerous. You know, it is dangerous, and we're talking hundreds, not thousands. There were tens of thousands taken away.
Well, fingers crossed. Paul, up to Scotland with the Times now. First Bucky, now they want to ban mobile phones from the classroom. Whatever next.
We shall find out.
Fast tonic wine, I'm referring to, rather than...
we shall find out. Minister is looking at mobile ban for schools, so a crackdown on the use of mobile phones in Scotland schools is being considered amid growing concerns they disrupt learning and affect brain development. Now, that's a very good point, which I'm going to park for a minute, because we should say up front that the school and education record in Scotland is not going downwards because of mobile phones. It's going downwards because of what the SNP have done over the last 14 years. And I think we have to accept that in order to move on and talk about this story. Now, of course, mobile phones are bad for the classroom. They're a modern obstruction that just weren't around in school classrooms when any of us were at school, and I don't have a problem with that. The one thing I do have a problem with this, because I don't like huge government, is why the government have got to get involved. I'm sure there are head teachers of any kind that would agree with this story. And in fact, my daughter has just gone back and started year 10 this year, and phones are just taken out, gone into lockers.
I was going to say,
not in
my
classrooms.
kids' school would never have allowed...
No.
They're allowed to go into school with the phone, and I think they can use it during the lunch hour, I think. I don't know exactly how frequently.
Breaks and lunch hour, I think.
But yeah, it's obviously got to be taken out at that point, you know.
I don't think anyone would argue with that.
It's extraordinary to me that it's even in debate anymore. I can't believe that.
Well, you know, as you know, with me, I'm in many, many films.
Yeah.
Many films. I'm in the new Indiana Jones films, and I'm in Maestro, which is the Leonard Bernstein film.
Yeah.
And most of these films, they take away your phones.
Do they?
And for an entire day, you don't have a phone, and it's like having your arms cut off.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling, isn't it? I occasionally walk the dog deliberately and try and build in a digital detox for 1.5 hours in the park with just the dog and no phone, and you feel weird. You feel strange, you know.
But isn't it rejuvenating?
Yes.
Just last week, for a moment, I realised that having a phone with me meant that I was working every minute I had a phone on me, because everything I do is through my phone and emails.
Deep work.
And
Absolutely.
as soon as you put it away, you're having a rest.
It's what people pay for. Lewis, this one in the Daily Mail, probably the last one of this section, right in the ribeye of your steak again, I believe.
Oh, also. Well, this is kids with high BMI, which is body mass index, which is a measurement of your height, your weight, and whether... It's a perception of fat. You can be totally fit and have a high BMI, but whatever. They said that kids who are like 12 have an increased risk of developing depression later in life, study suggests. And this is one of those stories. It's what I call a CARL.
A correlation.
Correlation, association, risk of, link to. It says that those kids... And the truth is, they have the answer already. It's not like they feel bad about being fat. Is that actual sugar makes people depressed.
Okay.
And there's an environmental reason for it. It raises your uric acid level. It shuts down your mitochondria, which produces the energy in the cell, in practically every cell except blood cells. And
so they seem to be saying that they have tried to analyse whether people who are fat when they're young are likely to be depressed when they're older, or whether people who are depressed when they're young are likely to be fat when they're older. And they say it's more likely that you get fat first and then you get depressed.
Yes, because the actual sugar itself, and you guys can out there, and you can look it up. You can Google it. You can Google up mental illness and carbohydrates. And
anything to add on that, Paul?
I don't think so, really. I mean, other than the fact that it doesn't need King's College of London to tell us this.
Lewis Schaefer, MD, is across this. We're at the halfway point, but you'll want to come back for the next section. We have 3 words: gay prison operas. See you in a couple of minutes.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. As we head into Tuesday, there will be a little bit of fog around tonight. Whilst in the southwest, we can expect some strong blustery winds, but the hot and sunny weather returns as we go through tomorrow because of this air of high pressure dominating the picture across the UK, leading to largely settled weather and dragging hot air in from the south. Meanwhile, looking at the details through Monday night, there is a front across the far north of Scotland, bringing some cloud and rain to Shetland. Elsewhere, a largely dry picture, clear skies, but some mist and fog patches developing, particularly towards the north and the east. Windier in the southwest, but many places seeing temperatures not dropping a huge amount, generally staying the mid to high teens Celsius, so quite a warm night to come. Bright start on Tuesday morning. Any mist and fog should quickly clear away. And then we do have that front I mentioned earlier gradually pushing its way further southwards, so turning a bit cloudy, a bit damp perhaps for Orkney in the far north of mainland Scotland. Elsewhere across the UK, lots of fine sunny weather, plenty of blue skies, and temperatures could be a touch higher than today for some, so highs around 31 Celsius, staying quite windy towards the southwest though. Wednesday's going to get off to a bit of a murky start for some eastern northeastern parts with some har and sea fret around. Most of that will burn back towards the coast, though the cloud could linger across the far east of Scotland. Otherwise, though, yes, it'll be a touch cloudier than recent days, but plenty of sunshine to be had. And with that, temperatures rising, likely to peak around Wednesday or Thursday, though the risk of some showers.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Paul, let's kick off the third quarter. Get confused with my fractions. Once again, I wonder if this is reality or if we've slipped into an outtake from Brass Eye here.
Why does he have that thing, that box up there?
It's just a little add-on.
That was my idea.
Some people can afford better boxes. I'm going to do this story now, Lewis, if you don't mind.
Say something to him, Simon. It's not...
OK, gay opera about imagined meeting between the gangster Mad Frankie Fraser and Ivan Novello that was due to have been staged at Wormwood Scrubs has been cancelled. I really love this story, Simon. Yeah. The reason I really love this story is, well, there's a couple of reasons. It's by Homo Promos, which is the production company, which just tickled me straight away. But what...
Have you seen previous productions?
I haven't seen this, no.
Okay.
What they've essentially taken is Ivan Novello, who was a known gay man and was in prison for petrol coupon misuse.
Wow.
And Mad Frankie Fraser,
not abuse, just misuse.
Misuse, misuse.
Yeah.
You know, I guess during that time it was a big deal.
Okay.
And Mad Frankie Fraser was better known for cutting people's heads off. And the like.
East End enforcer, right?
Yeah, one of the Craze friends. Evidently not gay at all. History would tell us.
So one of the Craze was, of course,
one of the Craze was
interrupting
gay.
this for detail, but
So in a way of being inclusive and diverse within their art, this touring theatre company have put together these two unlikely lovebirds and created a story where they meet in prison and fall in love, and it's essentially been pulled a week before it was to be performed at the chapel at Wormwood Scrubs.
Oh, it was actually going to be performed in the prison as well. Wow.
So at first I read this and thought it was prisoners acting this out.
No.
It's not. It's a touring theatre company who have done it elsewhere and are planning now were planning to do it in Wormwood Scrubs, but it's been pulled because they thought there might be negative.
I remember Mad Frankie Fraser did actually achieve. It wasn't totally random. He did actually achieve a degree of celebrity through Brass Eye. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember
He was doing
both.
little sort of tours of the East End and show you where he offed people and cut their
which is
throats
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
because you couldn't imagine that.
And it really was him as well.
Yeah,
you know, I
exactly.
think they'd struggle to top that. What do you think about this, Lewis? Does it feel like
I want to just apologise. There was a little bit of acting between Paul and I over the light boxes. I don't know whether
just
that was
get back to the story now.
professional. I just don't want people to think that I'm a horrible person for taking the light. We worked it out beforehand. It didn't turn out as
It's
good.
true. It's true.
Sorry for destroying your show. What do I think? I think I don't know these people. I know who Ivor Novello is. I don't know who Frankie Fraser is, but I don't.
You do know who Ivor Novello is.
I do. I know who he was or heard of him. Basically, I know about that award.
He's still the top songwriting award of the year is named after him. Still.
Yeah,
so,
yes. I know.
Novello Award.
The idea that he had some brief prison romance with a brutal killer.
Who wasn't in prison at that time? Was he in prison at that time?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they overlapped. You know, it's one of these things like Trotsky and
Is that a
Lenin
gay
playing chess
phrase,
in
overlapping?
Zurich or something, isn't it? You know, they have these.
Is that a
things.
gay phrase, overlapping?
Overlapping, yeah.
So
Not something you'd ever be guilty of, Lewis.
Yes, it is.
Let's have a look, and this sounds like it might be one for the BBC's disinformation correspondent in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, well, the BBC doesn't have correspondents. They just have hack people working for them because they're not a news organization. They're a state propaganda network. And the BBC boss is under pressure to explain why the news report, which is quote-unquote news report, because it's not news, it's state propaganda, about a convicted pedophile who was sent sexual messages to a 14-year-old boy was edited to remove any mention that he was a drag queen, his drag queen career.
Yeah.
So he was a bad guy. He was a bad guy, but he was quite involved in the pride events and drag queen acts, and they were, I guess the BBC, wait for this, was embarrassed about him doing that. They wanted to present him as just like a bad guy and not like a bad guy in the community. But I saw the picture of the guy, and he looked less of a drag queen than more like a drag dinner lady.
Well, maybe. I mean, I guess out of his makeup. But I remember seeing. Yeah, I know. I get it. I remember seeing the initial. I remember seeing the initial column, and it did have all that. That's the point. It had all that detail in, and then they removed it, and people monitored it, and gradually, little by little, all of this kind of stuff, which might have been used in order to cast doubt on the acceptability of the drag queen story hour and so on. I mean, did you follow this?
Yes, I did, and it's exactly that. And the trouble with this and the BBC doing this is that deception makes you wonder what else they're hiding. There was no need to be deceptive about that, because nobody thinks that every drag queen is a paedophile.
No.
I do not think there should be drag queen story hour. I'm not. When it's overly sexualised with young children, I'm put off by that. However, I don't think that every drag queen is some sort of pervert.
But now this has created the famous Streisand effect, hasn't it? And attracted much more attention, which is obviously Streisand being a popular figure lampooned in drag. Anyway, off to more glamorous latitudes now, Paul. Woody Allen is gracing the Venice Film Festival, and obviously The Guardian is primarily interested in the film.
It barely mentions the film, actually. I think it's about paragraph 8 by the time it gets to the film. So Woody Allen in Venice. The Me Too has been good for women, he says, but cancel culture can be silly. Now, I agree with one thing, cancel culture can be silly. It's quite nice at first and refreshing to hear that Woody Allen believes cancel culture exists, because that's a debate that still rages on every day of the week, despite people getting cancelled.
Well, people have tried to cancel him. In fact, they did cancel him from one of his publishers,
That's exactly what happened. I mean, I was going to make that point, but then the more you read about it, this is his 50th movie, by the way, so it can hardly be called cancellation if you're you're allowed to make more movies. But he is 87, and let's not forget that he has had a lot of women editors work with him. He's never been convicted of anything.
No.
And this is the problem I have with this.
Not merely not convicted. I think the accusations to any neutral observer have been completely, debunked. I don't think
that's not true. That is not true.
What do you think is?
I personally. Here's what I'm going to say. He has been cancelled. He has a very hard time getting the money. This last movie was made with a Moto G camera. It was filmed on a Moto G camera. I'm just saying it's a cheap camera.
Is it? Right.
It's
okay.
cheap.
I thought you were doing a sponsorship. And I was looking at we entered the Truman Show.
Tribe said it's filmed on a Nokia. I'm just saying it was like, because he's lost the money. He's lost the money. There are a lot of people. In our bubble, we might not think what he did was really wrong, but in the bubble out there, and a lot of people do believe the accusations.
Well, are you saying we don't believe what he did was wrong, or we don't believe he did what they say? Because if he did what they said, then I would certainly say it was wrong. But
we don't believe that he did what he said.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that a lot of people out there have been very quick to actually believe that. So we can't go around saying that any neutral observer would think, there's nothing, there's no smoke, there's no fire. Because a lot of people do believe it, and he has been canceled. This is so silly because he's like acting like it hasn't affected him, but it has affected him in a really big way.
Fair enough. Well, social media trends in the Times now, Lewis, one of the most nauseating developments since the invention of monogamy has reared up again.
Yeah. Well, this is actually public marriage proposals put pressure on partners. Experts warned in the Times that there's actually proposal planning. If you want to get married, you can go to these proposal people, and it's obviously the men making the proposal. I don't think a woman would have the stupidity to do this. And the truth is that if you have to pay, and this is one of the examples, £165,000 to rent Disneyland Paris to make a proposal to this woman, she probably doesn't love you and thinks
I tend to agree with you.
And thinks you're a simp. I don't know what the right word is. You've got no chance in the world of getting married.
The final section is coming up next. We've got a story about Viagra. You'll want to stay up for that. Boom, boom. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliner. So, Lewis, we'll kick off with the Daily Star, an important international story from Wyoming.
Yeah, Wyoming, which is one of the least populated states in the country. Hundreds of homeless people descend on town called Casper, which is and leave over 200 kilograms of feces in the street. I don't know why this is in the Daily. I don't know why this wouldn't even make an American.
Oh, really? This is normal?
Well, for now it is. Yes, it is normal now. The level of homelessness in the cities are unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's making it because it's Wyoming, which is a basically
When it says they descend, though, presumably this is some kind of migration from some event of some sort, then, is it?
Like spring break?
Yeah. No, it's not descending. It's like, it's not. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
So they're saying, well, I mean, the story itself says that hundreds of people descend on the town, which, and it never exactly says why. I mean, the idea that there's 200, I mean, I don't know whose job it is to weigh the feces.
But, well, 200 kilograms doesn't sound like the way Americans would do it either. They would talk about hundredweight or something, wouldn't they?
Well, because maybe they wanted to communicate.
But I want to know whether they've come from, has something been closed down? Has there been a hostel or something? Or have they been moved on
they
from
did say that they did say there was a homeless shelter. Maybe it's the only place where there's a homeless shelter in the state. The state is freezing most of the year.
Well, that's a good thing, I suppose. From
well, that's why I'm surprised there's like homeless people. I can understand LA where the weather's good, but they're over. It gets to -9 degrees average nighttime temperature in February, and it only gets up to 4 degrees.
But September is quite balmy by comparison, so maybe they're just making the most of the outdoor opportunities while they've got a mirror, Paul, a story about a red heifer, which apparently prefigures the end of days, as indeed the previous story might well be said to have done as well. But
it certainly sounds like it, doesn't it? First red heifer in 2,000 years fulfills Bible prophecy and signals end of days. No. This is not a story about Angela Rayner, Simon. However, it is a story about Christianity and Judaism. Red heifers, and I had no idea before reading this story, and then looking it up online after reading. Red heifers in both Christianity and Judaism feature as tales about the end of times. Now, I'm not sure how they know this is the first one to have been born in 2,000 years.
Oh,
go on.
Can I tell you what it means, the end of time?
Yeah.
Why this happens is that the red and possibly the heifer is an allusion to Venus, which broke free from Saturn or Jupiter about 2,700 years ago, which as a comet, and when it passed by the Earth and it passed by Mars, caused great distress in our solar system, and that's why.
And that appears in the Hebrew Bible, that explanation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Not just in that; it appears in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Incan books, in the Chinese texts, in all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Is Velikovsky.
Okay. Express now, Lewis. You're on a roll. The little blue pill could be Mother's little helper too.
Yeah, I want to apologise for this show because I'm giving you such a hard time, really. You're handling it. Have you started to drink before the show? There were other drugs available. Anyway, Viagra emerges as a potential answer to numerous health conditions. But is it safe? And this is another one of these things where it's like, let's use all the drugs we have. The other one was Ozempic.
Well, that one we've been using for a while. But it's interesting how sildenafil, if that is the correct pronunciation, seems to... It was not initially intended for erectile dysfunction, was it? Just opens up capillaries, right? And it turns out that can have all kinds of other beneficial effects, including, it seems, something to do with premenstrual pain?
Yeah, because it creates nitric oxide or nitric oxide, which is so crucial, which is why you should always breathe out of your nose. Do not breathe out of your mouth, because your nose actually produces this thing.
Paul, have you bothered to read the story?
I haven't. You know what?
If so, I wouldn't mind hearing from you.
I did read the story.
I'm fascinated by what Lewis said, which is not a good thing.
Oh wait, there's 3
This truly is a wonder drug, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is extraordinary. Yeah. Well, opening up capillaries, opening up blood flow. I mean, that could be the secret ultimately to curing dementia as well, of course, which is massive. But this sounds good. I know women experience an extraordinary amount of pain, you know, with the endometriosis, adenomyosis. These are not, trivial conditions. So it looks like that might be a...
We know it's relatively safe.
Yeah.
Because... millions of men have been taking it, as have women for other conditions as well. So the question mark is this safe? Yeah, it is. And do you know what? There might be some side effects, but it turns out they're quite good as well.
A lot of people seem to like to take it just to feel good, apparently. Yeah. I can't say anything, but it is generic now anyway, so it's affordable. Anyway, from the pre-Viagra years, Paul News from The Times, busting a time-worn myth about human relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite cynical about studies, and this is another one. Opposites don't attract. Major study finds major study. I'd like to bring that into dispute at some point. But this is another ridiculous study that no one has asked for, and it's essentially concluded that people that are vastly different from one another might not be attracted or good for long-term partnerships. So I don't think there's any great news in there. There's some very interesting bits about how there's a preconception that extroverts are more interested in introverts and vice versa, and actually extroverts are quite interested in extroverts as well, and introverts are quite interested in introverts as well. There's no real news in here.
I know a lot of people have talked... Schopenhauer in the early 19th century had the view that we were driven to find a mate who would compensate for our flaws. He didn't know about genetics, but he talked almost in those terms. He said the point is that you will fall in love with somebody, well, you will choose to have children with somebody who is actually really bad company for you. This is why he was very cynical about married life. You know, he thought that you would inevitably, this kind of, at another level, your will would draw you towards somebody, that nature was saying this will offset all your bad sides. You know?
And it's true to some extent. I mean, I wouldn't want to be married to someone who was just like me. That's the point, isn't it? It's two sides of the same magnet.
Nobody is just like anybody. The fact is, people get what they can get. Louis Schaefer, look at my wife.
There is some truth to that. I do think also once people are married, and certainly once they have children, their life changes so dramatically that aspects of them that weren't visible to each other suddenly emerge. And also they start to find tiny differences much more annoying or noticeable.
Yes,
you know.
so you do think this person's totally different than you because you hate them.
I always say just like, you get, oh, well, let's get married. Yes, let's get married. Let's buy a house. Yes, a house. Let's have furniture. Yes, and you go all the way down to ridge cushions. Oh, my God, I can't believe I ended up with this lunatic. Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail, Minister's TV blunder that says it all about Tory chaos. Mirror, class clowns. Guardian, Sunak under pressure over school funding as concrete crisis grows. Express, miracle weight loss jab to save lives and cut £6.5 billion bill. The iNews, Starmer calls up Blairites to fight election as left is demoted. And finally, the Daily Star, fangs ain't what they used to be. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. My thanks to my guest, Paul Cox. And Lewis. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Cressida Wetton and Josh Howie. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. Sleep well. See you soon.
I was great tonight.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. As we head into Tuesday, there will be a little bit of fog around tonight. Whilst in the southwest, we can expect some strong blustery winds, but the hot and sunny weather returns as we go through tomorrow because of this air of high pressure dominating the picture across the UK, leading to largely settled weather and dragging hot air in from the south. Meanwhile, looking at the details through Monday night, there is a front across the far north of Scotland, bringing some cloud and rain to Shetland. Elsewhere, a largely dry picture, clear skies, but some mist and fog patches developing, particularly towards the north and the east. Windier in the southwest, but many places seeing temperatures not dropping a huge amount, generally staying the mid to high teens Celsius, so quite a warm night to come. Bright start on Tuesday morning. Any mist and fog should quickly clear away. And then we do have that front I mentioned earlier gradually pushing its way further southwards, so turning a bit cloudy, a bit damp perhaps for Orkney in the far north of mainland Scotland. Elsewhere across the UK, lots of fine sunny weather, plenty of blue skies, and temperatures could be a touch higher than today for some, so highs around 31 Celsius, staying quite windy towards the southwest though. Wednesday's going to get off to a bit of a murky start for some eastern northeastern parts with some Har and sea fret around. Most of that will burn back towards the coast, though the cloud could linger across the far east of Scotland. Otherwise, though, yes, it'll be a touch cloudier than recent days, but plenty of sunshine to be had. And with that, temperatures rising, likely to peak around Wednesday or Thursday, though the risk of some showers.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.